a lesser level of competition because this really benefited him none. This didn't prove that, he could still hang this. But, I mean, even if he had gone in there and looked competitive and got caught, or he'd have gone in there and lost a 3-round decision or a 5-round decision, I mean, people would say, all right, he's still got something in the tank. After that fight, though, Lee, it's just people, the boo birds that said the guy shot, it did nothing to dispel that thought. And perhaps that shouldn't be the way because, I mean, let me give you another example. All right, this is like would be akin to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a quarterback. This would be akin to Dan Marino coming out of retirement, and his first game would be lining up under center with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and trailing by 6.
I completely
agree. I mean, it's not, it's almost an unfair situation to be put in. And that's how I feel about BJ with that fight.
No, I agree with you. I think the only one who's come close in the past year of pulling something, I can't think of anybody who's come that. I mean, I thought Anderson Silva, after the layoff and stepping in on 2 weeks' notice in his last fight, was just to go the distance was impressive. He didn't get caught. He didn't do anything stupid. But I can't think of anybody. And you got to talk about certain age group. Now we're talking age groups. Fighters above the age of 35. Like, yeah, it's a thing. It really is a thing. And I've always wondered this about BJ, and I think it was smart on Randy's part. And I always wondered this about Dan, and I'm glad he retired. You're talking about guys that are strictly grapplers or BJJ guys who have the ability to strike as well. Now there is a style called MMA that it's been outlined by so many fighters and so many guys who do it so exceptionally well, where it incorporates a boxing style in, out, jab, 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 punch, shoot, 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 where they're playing the game, where they're aware of the rules. These guys grew up watching BJ Penn. They grew up watching Chuck Liddell. They grew up watching Randy Couture. The game is caught up, and now it's, and I would even say not even MMA. I'd say it's UFC style. I mean, it's its own point structure. It should be classified not as MMA. It should be classified as UFC. I know that's not fair to MMA, the terminology, but I mean, we're seeing that now, and I think it's great that Silva got a win, but his age is going to catch up to him eventually. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. And we as fans, we so desperately want another big name to cling to. It wasn't that long ago that Silva was being argued as the greatest living fighter ever. Dana couldn't drool hard enough on this dude. He was on the cover of everything. He was the poster boy. There's always the poster boy, and then with Ronda, there's the poster girl, and it keeps going on. And it seems like the UFC right now is swimming and looking for the next poster, because Conor's clearly doing whatever crazy Conor wants. It is crazy Uncle Conor. He's doing crazy Uncle Conor again.
Right. And, first off, the thing about Silva, he won on Saturday, but that was highly debatable. That is being highly disputed online. And, I mean, this is against a guy, Derek Brunson, who got knocked out his last fight.
Right.
This guy's been caught a few times in his career. I mean, Anderson 5 years ago would have ended this fight in the first round. Now we're talking about whether he actually won the fight or not. As for the thing, it's, the looking for that superstar to cling on, let's be honest. I mean, it's been that way since the beginning, whether it was Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, Mark Coleman in the second generation, and you had Hughes, and Chuck and Randy and Tito. I mean, they always look for that name to cling on. Now it's sort of, like you said, there's two names that really get a lot of pub that get put on the cover, which they shouldn't do that because there's a lot of great fighters out there. But it almost seems like all their marketing efforts were put towards Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor. And, I mean, case in point, Rousey's last fight, the 48-second beatdown from Amanda Nunes. The whole publicity, everything that was being pushed out there was she's back. It was all about Ronda. Let alone never mind the fact that Amanda Nunes was a champion and had been on a Ring of Terror destroying people. It was all about Ronda, and it's almost a little bit short-sighted by the UFC to focus all their eggs on one basket because they've got a ton of great fighters on the roster. Demetrius Johnson's no joke. I mean, John Jones, when he isn't running afoul of the law, is no joke. Daniel Cormier, former Olympic wrestler. I mean, there's tons of names you can promote, but they still stick to their guns and promote too, and then they wonder why we have situations like this weekend where, you got a title fight between Holly Holm and and Jermaine Ramonde in a new division, and nobody gave a crap. I mean, like you said, if you mentioned Cyborg, if it would have been Cyborg, that would have been a bit different story because she's a big-time attraction. But neither of these women are big-time attractions, and they should be because of their pedigrees, but they're not because they don't get anywhere near the publicity they deserve. They don't get anywhere near the pushback that they should be getting.
So then the logical thought process, if you're the UFC, if you're stacking, you'd stack the card. I'm sure that when they went into this, they thought the main event was going to be enough to carry, and you got Silva on the undercard. But come on, Souza is got to be 80. Like your third fight. I mean, your main card. You got two guys that are collectively 100. I don't want to be mean to Tim or Jacare, but those guys have been fighting since 2007. I think the last time I checked. I mean, really? And then you got Glover Teixeira, who I actually like and actually won. But okay, collectively we're at 150 years of MMA. I mean, I'm not being a jerk about this. Why are you still like kind of like? Are they? Is that a name? Is it just the name value? Because if that's the case, bring back Punk. Because I'd rather have Phil back in there.
Well, that's a great point you bring up too. Is you got Jacare and Boach, okay, and I like Tim. I like Tim. He's a fellow Pennsylvanian, okay. Tim is actually trained by one of my best friends in MMA, Marcus Irish Hand Grenade Davis, a guy who helped me get my start in MMA commentary. I will never root against Marcus. I will never root against Tim. But let's be brutally honest here, Lee. Should Jacare have been fighting Boach? I mean, Jacare should be up there fighting a Luke Rockhold, if not a Michael Bisping for the belt, or a Yoel Romero. Not Tim Boach, who, by the way, it was a trivia note, he was Dan Henderson's last win.
Right.
I mean, it's just, he shouldn't have been in there with them, and it was almost like, he was fed to the wolves. He was fed to the wolves, and people knew that. They smelled it. They sensed it. They tuned out. Same goes with the Glover Teixeira fight. I know Glover lost his last fight to Anthony Johnson, not some tomato can bum, and he's put in there with Jared Cannonier. I mean, look, I know Jared because he's trained out here, but if you ask 10 people who Jared Cannonier is, 9 would probably give you a blank stare and say, I've never heard of him in my life. So, I mean, it's just these matchups that they're putting together. I mean, it's almost like for the sake of matchups. Glover shouldn't be fighting somebody outside the top 15 at this point in his career. Jacare shouldn't be fighting anyone outside the top 5. It's pointless. It's just a gimme win almost.
All right, and on the card below that, and I agree with you. I'm like, who are these people? What the hell is going on down? I watched everything all night. Sometimes I wish I just covered MMA but with everything that I had to watch, Fight to Win, this. And I think there was a half dozen boxing matches. Sunday night, I'm 40, 50 fights deep, and this was a plodding card for me that I really wanted to like because, now that I take BJJ, hey, it's fun to watch. No, it's not. It's not even fun to watch. It's still going. It's like that car ride to the Grand Canyon. This thing is still going. And at that pace, I mean, I didn't even go back and check running time. Thank God for DVRs, so you can fast forward. But everybody is stretching this sucker out. I mean, that's crazy to me. This fight card probably, if you clocked it, had to take hours and hours and hours. Did we learn anything from the undercard? Is there anything that's going to jump out of there from, say, Glenn or Race or even the kid who started off the card, LaFleur? I mean, these are unknown names to the casual fans. Did we get something out of the bottom of the card?
No. I mean, we basically, and the grappling match, I mean, if you like jiu-jitsu, obviously the fight between LaFleur and LaFleur and Carnero was interesting because those two were very high-level grapplers. But this really, no stars were established. I didn't watch that card and say, hey, this guy's got a future, this guy's going places. Just, a bunch of guys on your card that are good, they're UFC quality, but none of these guys are going to be the needle movers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. All right, last topic while I have you as my insider. This Saturday, correct? The biggest night ever in MMA, ever. Why are we so fascinated with the Last Emperor? What makes him such a mythical creature? I mean, I know why when I got in and I got to see him live, and I was there for Pride. I actually got to go to Pride events and actually see the mythos that is Fedor. I saw him against Orlovsky in Los Angeles. Is it worth the hype against Matt Mitrone?
I got to stop and think about that for a minute. Because to me, he's like the Peyton Manning of MMA. He's like the Peyton Manning of MMA, and this is Super Bowl 50.
I like
He's
that.
a shell of who he used to be. You know what I mean? This is a guy that his last venture into American MMA was terrible. I mean, yeah, he beat Arlovsky. By the way, he was getting dusted the entire fight till Arlovsky inexplicably decided to throw a flying knee, which is the biggest high risk.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. He was getting dusted by Brett Rogers. Okay, he was getting dusted by Brett Rogers, and I don't even want to tell you what Brett Rogers is doing now. It's not good. I mean, he got thumped by Henderson. He got thumped by Bigfoot, who was, a middle of the pack heavyweight in the UFC. I mean, it's just, hell, even recently, his most recent fight was against Fabio Maldonado, who was a 500 fighter in the UFC, and he was getting beat. He should have lost that damn fight. So, I mean, I think part of it is, all right, it's Fedor. It's
right.
Fedor. It's like the BJ Penn syndrome. Okay, it's BJ. If that's what when Tito fought a couple weeks ago. It's Tito.
Tito. Right.
Like I said, it's the Peyton Manning Super Bowl 50 syndrome. We want to watch to see if Peyton Manning's going to get that one more ring and he can ride off into the sunset, or if he's going to wind up looking like Johnny Unitas, in Super Bowl 13, where they beat Dallas, but he threw 3 interceptions before he got pulled. That's what I think people are going to watch for. Is Fedor? Is there anything left in the tank? Is this guy? Does he have one more superhuman effort to overcome? Is he going to overcome the odds again, like he's done so many times in his career? I think that's why people are tuning in. And I'm going to tell you right now, Matt Mitrione, he if he fights strategically and doesn't turn it into a slugfest, he'll knock Fedor out. The guy can hit. He could drop anybody in the sport. So I have a feeling if Matt fights smart within his capabilities, this will be a short night for Fedor, and it'll be a disappointing night for the Fedor fans.
All right, but Coker seems to have a pretty interesting model going, okay? And it's getting views, and it's working. He's got a good relationship now with Spike. He's really in that, they're in a position now where they seem to be, okay, we're going to put this one sideshow match and then stack out the card. At least that seems to be the option. How is Bellator doing running these cards? Can I swear? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Why else would you want to do a fucking podcast if you couldn't swear?
Okay.
I tried to do it the other way, but nobody listens to clean shows.
Yeah. See, that's why everybody wonders on MMA Fight Radio. If you listen to me, I will walk as close to that line as I possibly can without completely stepping over it. They get a kick out of it because it's like I'm not afraid to tap dance on the line. There's so many times where I want to say, when a guest is calling in, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, right. Right.
But anyway, I digress though. The Bellator model, they seem to be going with the freak show horse shit. You know what I mean? Instead of putting emphasis on the talent that they have, like Michael Chandler and the lower weight class. They've got some talented fighters on there. They really do have some extremely talented fighters. Pat Curran. I mean, I could go on and on, but instead of putting emphasis on that, you're putting this freak show horse shit fight between, God rest his soul, Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000, which was the lousiest fight I've seen in 20 years of watching MMA. I mean, I've seen bums fight outside the Buffalo Wild Wings on UFC fight events that looked more technical than that. You had one dude who almost died in the ring, and you had the other one who died a couple months later. I mean, that's to me, they've got potential to do so much, yet they do this silly horse shit, and it sets them back and really kills off a lot of their credibility. I mean, Tito versus Chael Sonnen a couple of weeks ago. 2 of my favorite fighters in MMA, 2 of my favorite people in MMA. But after that fight ended, immediately people saying that was fixed. That was fixed. Is this wrestling or is this MMA? I mean, so I sort of get why Coker's doing it. But at the same time, it's like, look, man, you got a talented group of fighters that knee push. I mean, they